Tell me how awful these videos are where like the camera is like 3 feet from my face. I'm scary enough at 10 feet away, much less 3 feet away. Yeah. Boy, I've had too much caffeine today. You know, I've always loved making videos about stuff that nobody else talks about. And I made a couple videos a few months ago. You're weird when you scratch your head with your camera. I made a couple of videos a couple months ago, talking about a topic that nobody else on YouTube does talk about. And digital photography is completely different. Well, not completely, but it is, you know, rather different than film photography. And it's different from what people have their brains used to thinking about. And what I simply said was that you should saturate in your camera and expose for how you want the shot to look in your computer. Obviously, this is not a good idea if you're a JPEG shooter. Not a JPEG shooter. Actually, I shoot RAW plus fine. The only reason I shoot RAW plus fine is it actually speeds up the workflow. You can actually quickly look at the JPEGs and choose what you want to process with the relational RAW file. So this is not good for JPEG shooters if you're a JPEG shooter. The point is that a lot of people, especially now that people are always been lazy for the past 20, 30 years, now they're really lazy. They look in their EVF, and the EVF is not all that accurate. People say, well, mirrorless cameras are WYSIWYG. What you see is what you got. That's generally kind of accurate. Of course, no mirrorless camera can tell you what the F you're getting when you're doing flash photography, okay? But that goes without saying. But they're using their EVF, and they're dialing in how they want the shot to look in there. It's like, well, I see this shot that's like mostly shadow, and you got some lights over here. Well, I want a shot that looks like, yeah, I know why they're doing that. Because they want instantaneous gratification. And this is the reason why people love mirrorless. One of the reasons why people love mirrorless. I can look in the EVF and dial in my exposure, and my EVF will like give me instantaneous feedback on what it is. Like, yeah, man, that's exactly how I want my shot to look. That is not only lazy, it's pathetic, and it's a wrong starting premise. Why is that the case? Why do you want to saturate in your camera? This is based upon shooting RAW, of course, not shooting JPEG. And I'm not talking about flooding everything with light. When I say saturating camera, I'm not saying add as much light as possible or drag your exposure all the way to the maximum with as much light as you can. No, you need to obviously sculpt with your light. Okay, so I'm never talking about flooding everything with light. You need to sculpt with your light, but you need to saturate your sculpture, what it is that you've sculpted the light to be. You need to trust your histogram and your light meter. Of course, most people don't use a light meter. Most people don't know what lighting ratios are, how incredible lighting ratios are. This is the ratio between ambient and flash illumination, whether that be fill flash. And of course, what that ratio is. It can be incredibly dark, and most of your illumination could be fill flash. The point is that your LCD and your EVF are wrong. If you are, like 99.9% of everybody else out there, trying to get instant gratification from your EVF or your LCD, especially with mirrorless cameras, obviously so, you're making a big mistake. You should saturate in your camera and expose in your computer. Your camera is not for exposure. Now let me make this really clear. Obviously getting accurate exposure is, of course, incredibly important. That's part of any photography, be it film photography or digital photography. What I'm saying is that you should not be exposing in your camera, and this mostly applies, of course, to mirrorless cameras. You should not be exposing for what you want the shot to look like. This is the error of really what this is the error of instantaneous gratification a la mirrorless cameras, which can display through the EVF or LCD WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. The problem with that is that if you're only exposing, trying to not max out your highlights, but actually make the shot look how you want, say, well, I just want some rim lighting on this building. You know, I want the building to be in shot. Yeah, no, let's just assume that you have no speed light. And of course, speed light is hardly useful for building photography. Even a huge, powerful studio strobe is not. It's not going to illuminate the entire building. If you actually make the shot look how you want through your instant gratification error in thinking methodology when it comes to exposure, what happens is you're actually depriving the camera of the raw information with enough information to extract in post-production. This is what it means to expose in your computer. What you want to do is pack each and every raw file with as much information as you possibly can. You obviously want to sculpt the light. Of course, we're talking about ambient illumination. There's nothing to sculpt. What you get is what you get. Obviously, you use a polarizing filter, whatever sort of special effect you want. But you need to saturate in your camera. You need to push as much information in there without clipping highlights. As much information as possible. Well, that's not how I want the shot to look. It doesn't matter. You're shooting raw files. Why aren't you saturating? I've gotten so much pushback from this. When I made that video, a couple of videos like that, and I still get getting pushback from that. And I told people in that video, and I'll tell you right now, is prove me wrong. Give me one instance, one logical point in which I'm incorrect. And you can't. You can't. Nobody can. I'm not saying don't sculpt your light. Obviously, sculpt the light to fit the composition however it is you want. But you want to saturate in camera and expose in your computer. Right? You expose the shot how it is you want it to look in post-production in your computer once you've popped out the SD card or XQD card or flash card. There is no downside to sensor saturation. More information is always better. When you limit the shot to how it is you want to look, you've deprived the shadows of sufficient information to extract in post-production. If you saturate the sensor to the maximum point before you clip the highlights and start blowing the hell out of everything, I never said blow anything out. I never said that. I never implied that, nor did I infer that. When you saturate in sensor, you're giving every possible chance for that image, the raw file, with whatever dynamic range your camera has, to have as much information as possible for extraction in your computer when you get home with your camera. You pop the SD card in your slot on your computer. Sensor saturation in digital photography has no downside unless you're shooting JPEGs. And I'm not talking about shooting JPEGs, I'm talking about shooting RAW files. This is, of course, one of like 10,000 reasons why you should be shooting RAW. And if you don't know what to do with RAW, then you should get a book and learn how to use RAW. What are the advantages? The countless 10,000 advantages of RAW. Of course, the difference between RAW and JPEG is the same difference between cookie dough or a dough and a baked pizza. Once the pizza's baked, that's it. You got what you got. That's what a JPEG file is. A RAW file is the dough, which gives you enormous latitude to create countless things. Cupcakes, pizzas, cakes. You know, there's like 10,000 things you could do with dough. You can't do much with a cooked pizza. That's what the hell a JPEG is. But the point is that saturation in your camera has absolutely no downside. There's no type of photography or no type of image where sensor saturation has a downside. I'm not talking about clipping highlights or blowing the shot. I'm talking about putting as much information as absolutely fucking possible into the RAW file so that you have as much information to work with. The more you got to work with on your computer, the better the image will look. 100% of the time. 100%. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's always 100%. How you want the shot to look is dictated, should be dictated on your computer, not your camera. So this is the laziness that develops and has spawned from the EVF WYSIWYG view on mirrorless cameras. This is actually one of the serious downsides of mirrorless cameras, that it makes people really lazy and they'll dial in the exposure to look how they want it to look. But you shouldn't be doing that in your camera. You should be doing that on your computer, not your camera. Okay? Try to contradict me. It's impossible. On this point, anyway. Bye. If you like these videos, please click the link below because anything helps. Thank you.